There is a profound freedom in realizing that nothing truly binds you except your own mind. You are not chained to outcomes, nor are you obligated to wrestle with the illusions of control. The world hums along an intricate dance of cause and effect, and yet here you are, holding on to anxieties as if they were sacred duties you must protect. But every weight you cling to is nothing more than a story rehearsed so many times, it feels like a fact. Beneath it all, life is whispering a different truth. A truth so simple that the mind often refuses to hear it. You do not need to fight so hard to become what you already are. When you finally pause long enough to feel the breath entering your body, the way it rises and falls, without needing your permission, something shifts. You start to see through the madness of your own seriousness. You realize that peace is not the trophy awarded at the end of struggle, but the ground you have always been standing on. Like a river that does not question its direction, like clouds that never argue with the wind. Life moves effortlessly, and it is only the mind that insists everything is a problem to be solved. The moment you stop wrestling the waves, you discover you were never drowning. You were simply tired from swimming against the current. Imagine for a moment that nothing is wrong, not in the world, not in your past, not in the future you keep trying to predict. Imagine that all the chaos you fear is merely movement, life shifting itself into new forms too large for your understanding. What if the confusion you carry is not a sign of failure, but a sign of transformation? What if the discomfort is not punishment, but preparation? You see, a tree does not panic when the wind rises. It bends. And in bending, it survives the storm that would break the rigid. The tragedy is that we humans cling. We cling to our plans, our identities, our expectations, as if gripping tighter will somehow make the world obey us. Yet the more tightly we hold, the more painfully life must pry our fingers open. And so suffering is born, not from what happens, but from our refusal to let it happen. Look carefully, and you will notice this truth in the smallest things. The arguments you replay in your head long after the moment has passed. The fear of futures that never arrive. The pain of imagining that you must carry everything alone. But what if none of this was necessary? What if you were allowed to release the story, even for a moment? Because underneath the noise, there is a version of you that has never been rushed, never been behind, never been broken. A version of you that is not waiting for the world to give permission to breathe. This deeper self already knows how to flow with life. It knows the difference between effort and struggle, between movement and resistance. And if you listen closely, you might hear it whispering, "You do not need to win the game. You only need to stop believing that you are losing." To detach is not to withdraw. It is not the cold apathy of someone who no longer cares. Detachment is the warm clarity of someone who finally sees. You can participate fully in life without being possessed by it. You can love without clinging, act without forcing, dream without fearing. When you stop needing every outcome to bend to your will, you step into a kind of freedom that feels almost surreal, as though the world is moving with you rather than against you. And perhaps that is the truth you have forgotten. You were never meant to control the river. You were meant to learn how to float. The curious thing about human suffering is that it rarely comes from the moment you are actually living. Almost all of it arises from the moments you imagine the stories your mind spins about what could happen, what should have happened, or what might never happen at all. If you listen carefully, you'll notice that the mind is almost never here. It leaps ahead into futures that don't exist, or digs backward into pasts it cannot change, stitching together a tapestry of worry that feels real simply because you've rehearsed it for so long. But if you pause, truly pause, you may discover that this very moment is strangely harmless. The room you're in is not attacking you. The breath in your body is steady. The ground beneath your feet is not collapsing. For a brief second, you are completely safe. And yet, the mind insists on danger, insists on urgency, insists on being busy because if it ever stopped, it might have to face the terrifying possibility that nothing is actually wrong. You see, the mind is addicted to problems. It feels naked without them. It creates storms just to give itself something to solve. It tells you that peace is on the other side of solving everything, but the moment one storm settles, it invents another. And so you spend your life chasing calm like someone chasing a horizon, always moving, never arriving. The joke, of course, is that the horizon never existed. It was only a line drawn by your imagination. Imagine for a moment that your mind is like a theater projector. The images it casts look enormous, vivid, overwhelming. But the source of the picture, the projector itself, is quite small. The drama only seems large because you mistake the screen for reality. But if you were to step behind the screen, even once, you would see the truth. The fear, the urgency, the tension, all of it was light and shadow, nothing more. This is why presence feels so liberating. When you come back into your body, into your breath, into this exact second, the projector flickers and the illusion weakens. Suddenly the problems shrink. They lose their teeth. Because problems cannot survive in the present moment. They only exist in time, in the future you fear or the past you cling to. But right now? Right now there is nothing to fix. There is only the sensation of being alive. But the mind doesn't like this. It panics when you stop feeding it stories. It whispers, if you stop worrying, something bad will happen. It convinces you that anxiety is a form of responsibility, that fear is a form of preparation, that constant thought is a form of control. But anxiety does not protect you. It only exhausts you. Fear does not prevent the future. It only steals the present. And thought, endless, swirling thought, does not give you control. It only creates the illusion of it. Think of a river again. If you stand on its bank and worry about the current, does the water slow down? If you shout at it, does it turn? If you try to predict every twist and bend, do you change its path? Of course not. The river flows with or without your permission. And so does life. Your worrying does nothing but drain your strength, the very strength you need to navigate the flow with grace. There is a great relief in accepting this, because once you stop trying to wrestle life into shape, you begin to see something stunningly simple. Life was never against you. It was only your resistance that made it feel hostile. Like a wave that becomes dangerous not because of its nature, but because of your attempt to fight it. If you had let it lift you, it would have carried you effortlessly. People often ask, but if I let go, won't everything fall apart? But look closely. You did not create the sunrise this morning. You did not beat your own heart through the night. You did not instruct your lungs to pull in oxygen or your cells to repair themselves. Life was managing itself long before you arrived and will continue long after you stop pretending to control it. Letting go is not irresponsibility. It is humility. It is the recognition that there is a deeper intelligence at work, one that does not require your fear to function. And here is the most surprising part. The moment you stop resisting, life begins to open. Coincidences fall into place. Conversations arrive at the right time. Opportunities appear without being forced. Because when you let go of the mind's grip, you make space for reality to flow through you rather than around you. Letting go is not the loss of control. It is the rediscovery of harmony. There comes a moment in every life, often quiet, often unexpected, when a person begins to suspect that the story they've been living is too small. Not because they lack ambition, not because they haven't achieved enough, but because somewhere deep underneath the noise, they can feel a truth pressing gently against the edges of their existence. I am more than this. Not more in the sense of accomplishment, but more in the sense of awareness. It is a peculiar kind of awakening. At first, it doesn't feel like enlightenment. It feels like discomfort, a restlessness without a name, a subtle knowing that the ladder you've been climbing might be leaning against the wrong wall. You start to notice that the things you once chased with desperation now feel strangely hollow. The praise that once thrilled you now evaporates quickly. The goals you thought would complete you dissolve as soon as you reach them. And in that dissolution, you discover something crucial. Every destination you've chased was a mirage. Because every time you arrived, the arrival didn't last. This realization can be terrifying if you cling to the old way of living, but liberating if you allow yourself to lean into it. Because beneath the collapsing structures of expectation, something softer begins to emerge, a different kind of desire. Not the desire to achieve, prove, or become, but the desire to feel alive. There is a difference between a life lived as a performance and a life lived as an experience. Most people perform. They speak to be seen, not heard. They work to be validated, not fulfilled. They move not from inner rhythm, but from outer pressure. They live inside the expectations of others, like actors who never step out of costume. But there comes a moment, perhaps this very moment, when you begin to ask, what if I stopped acting? What if the roles fell away? What if the masks dissolved? What if I allowed myself to be the unfiltered, unpolished, unperformed version of me? At first, this idea feels dangerous, vulnerable, uncertain. You worry that without your role, you might be nothing. But look closer. Every tree stands without a role. Every wave rises without a purpose statement. Every star shines without asking for permission. Their existence is their expression, and that is enough. So why do you imagine you must justify yours? This is the illusion that begins to crack when awakening touches you. You start to see that your worth was never tied to your performance, that the self you've been protecting, polishing, managing, and negotiating with is not the self that life is asking for. Life is calling for the deeper one, the one you abandoned to fit in, the one you silenced to be loved, the one you hid to be safe. The mind will try to resist this shift. It will tell you that if you stop playing the game, you will fall behind. But behind what? Life is not a race. It is a flow. In the moment you stop sprinting, you realize the river has been carrying you the entire time. The real turning point comes when you stop asking, "What will they think?" and begin asking, "What feels true?" Not what feels comfortable, not what feels impressive, what feels true. Truth has its own gravity. When you follow it, life begins to arrange itself around your honesty. People who resonate with you arrive. People who don't fall away. Opportunities that nourish your soul appear. Doors that were never meant for you close quietly. And something remarkable happens. The world outside you begins to reflect the world inside you. This is the paradox of authenticity. The moment you stop trying to fit in is the moment you finally belong. Not to a crowd, not to a group, but to yourself. You begin to feel an unfamiliar sensation, a lightness, a spaciousness, an inner exhale that says, "Ah, this is what I've been missing." Not success, not perfection, presence. The kind of presence that allows you to see life not as a test to pass, but as a dance to join. The kind that softens your ambition into inspiration and transforms your fear into curiosity. The kind that makes ordinary moments glow because you are finally here to witness them. And perhaps this is the quiet miracle. When you stop trying to become someone, you finally meet the person you already are. There is a moment, subtle, almost imperceptible, when life begins to reveal its true nature to you. Not through grand revelations, not through thunderclaps of enlightenment, but through the quiet undoing of everything you thought you knew. It arrives like dawn, slowly, gently, so gradually that you do not realize the darkness has lifted until you look around and see the light everywhere. And in that light, something becomes unmistakably clear. Most of your suffering was self-created, not intentionally, not maliciously, but through misunderstanding. You believed you were separate from life, standing outside of it, trying to manage it, like a puppeteer pulling strings. But puppeteers grow tired, puppets fall, strings tangle, and the illusion of control tightens around your chest until you can barely breathe. You mistake this tension for responsibility. You call it adulthood. You call it seriousness. You call it realism. But life calls it unnecessary. Because when you finally look honestly, you begin to see that the things you fought hardest to control often slip through your fingers anyway. The relationships you clung to dissolved. The plans you forced fell apart. The outcomes you obsessed over unfolded in ways you never predicted. And the strange, absurd truth begins to dawn on you. The universe was never asking you to control anything. It was asking you to participate. To participate the way a dancer participates in music, not by gripping the rhythm with fear, but by allowing the body to respond. The way a surfer participates in the ocean, not by commanding the waves, but by moving with them. The way a tree participates in the wind, not by resisting every gust, but by swaying, bending, yielding, so it does not break. When you start to live this way, something extraordinary happens. The war inside you quiets. The ego, which once screamed instructions, begins to whisper. The anxiety, which once felt like a storm, softens into rain. The resistance, which once defined your entire existence, melts into something gentler, something like trust. Not blind trust, not naive optimism, but the deep, ancient trust that your life is not a mistake, that you are not an accident, that the path unfolding beneath your feet is not random chaos, but an intelligent, unnameable flow that has been guiding you since the beginning. You notice this intelligence in small ways at first. The unexpected encounter, the perfect timing, the chance event that seems too aligned to be coincidence. But soon, you see it everywhere. Every heartbreak carved out space within you. Every loss humbled your ego. Every delay protected you from a path that was not yours. Every confusion forced you inward, toward the very truth you spent years avoiding. Life was not punishing you. Life was preparing you to see, preparing you to soften, preparing you to wake up. And awakening is not about acquiring some mystical knowledge. It is about shedding illusions. The illusion that you must earn your worth. The illusion that you are in danger. The illusion that life is happening to you rather than through you. The illusion that the mind knows better than the moment. When these illusions loosen, even slightly, you begin to taste a freedom that feels foreign only because you have forgotten it. A freedom that does not depend on circumstances. A freedom that breathes underneath every experience: joy, sorrow, gain, loss, like an unbroken thread. You realize that life does not need to be controlled, predicted, or perfected. It only needs to be met with presence, met with acceptance, met with the dignity of someone who no longer resists their own existence. This is where the great transformation begins. Not when life changes, but when you stop demanding that it must. Suddenly, the present moment, the one you always dismissed as ordinary, becomes luminous. Not because it is special, but because you are finally awake enough to see it. The simplest gestures become profound. The warmth of a cup in your hands, the sound of rain on the window, the quiet between conversations, the breath rising in your chest. These were always sacred, but you were too busy rehearsing the future to feel them. Now, everything feels like a return not to who you should be, but to who you already are beneath the noise. And in this returning, you discover something astonishing. The life you were running toward was always here, waiting for you to slow down, waiting for you to open, waiting for you to surrender. Not in defeat, but in recognition. There comes a point in every inner journey where you realize that nothing more needs to be added. Not another belief, not another accomplishment, not another layer of effort or ambition. Instead, something needs to be removed. The illusions, the conditions, the old stories that have kept you distant from yourself. It is a strange thing to discover that freedom has been available all along, yet inaccessible because of the prisons we build inside our minds. The bars were made of expectations, the walls made of comparison, the locks forged by fear. But the key? The key was always in your pocket: awareness. The simple act of seeing what is true without flinching, without denial, without running. Awareness is not loud. It does not break down the door. It simply illuminates the room so you can see that the door was never locked. And when you finally step out of that self-made prison, don't enter a new world, you enter the same world with new eyes. The colors seem richer. The air feels lighter. The future, once terrifying, becomes wide and open. Not because you know what it holds, but because you are no longer demanding that it obey your script. You begin to understand that certainty was never life's gift to you. Presence was. Presence is the real security. Presence is the real grounding. Presence is the only moment where peace exists. Everything you have ever feared lives in the future. Everything you have ever regretted lives in the past. But everything you have ever needed lives here in the now, in this breath. This is why sages laugh when asked about enlightenment. Not because the question is foolish, but because the answer is so obvious once seen. Enlightenment is not an achievement. It's the recognition of what has always been. It is the moment you stop searching for yourself like a lost object and realize you were never missing. You were simply distracted. Distracted by the noise, distracted by the chase, distracted by the dream of someday. But someday is a phantom. You don't live in someday, you can only live in today. And when you finally return to today, not as an idea, but as an experience, you realize something astonishing. Life is not a problem to be solved. It is an unfolding, a flowering, a play of forms. You are not here to conquer the world. You are here to participate in it. To express your nature the way a tree expresses its nature, without effort, without apology. You do not have to become worthy. You do not have to earn your place. You do not need a cosmic permission slip to breathe, to feel, to exist. You are already woven into the fabric of the universe. You fit because you exist. You matter because you are here. And when you finally embrace this, the fear that once haunted you begins to fade. It doesn't disappear all at once, fear rarely does, but it loses its authority. It stops being the captain and becomes a passenger. You no longer follow it blindly. You see it for what it is, a sensation, a story, a habit of the mind, no more than a ripple on the surface of consciousness. And beneath the ripple, there is a vast stillness, a stillness that has been waiting for you. When you sink into that stillness, something extraordinary happens. You stop trying to become, and you begin to be. You stop performing, and you begin to live. You stop clinging, and you begin to flow. This is the transformation no one can give you, and no one can take away. A shift so gentle it feels like remembering. A liberation so quiet it feels like coming home. Life does not need to change for you to awaken. You need only stop insisting that it must. Because the moment you stop resisting what is, the moment you surrender the tight grip of expectation, the moment you allow yourself to breathe as if you are already enough, something opens, something softens, something aligns. And in that alignment, the world mirrors your inner freedom. Not by magic, not by force, but by resonance. What you seek externally begins to flow naturally toward you because you are no longer pushing it away with fear. The love you thought you needed to earn begins to feel like something you can give. The peace you thought you had to chase begins to feel like something you can carry. The life you thought you needed to build begins to feel like something you can receive. For the first time, you are not trying to control the river. You are floating. You are trusting. You are awake. And in that awakening, you discover the truth that has been echoing through every moment of your life. You were never lost. You were only learning how to see,